Eiji Aonuma just dropped cryptic hints about the next Zelda game's antagonist, and if fans are decoding this correctly, Nintendo might be bringing back one of the most terrifying villains in the franchise's history. What did Aonuma say that has the community spiraling into speculation? And more importantly, what if this villain has been hiding in plain sight all along? The Legend of Zelda series has given players some truly iconic antagonists. Ganondorf, the Demon King; Majora, the ancient evil sealed within a cursed mask; Girahim, the flamboyant sword spirit. But in recent interviews discussing the future of the franchise, series producer Eiji Aonuma has been choosing his words very carefully. And when Aonuma gets cryptic, that's when fans need to pay attention. Let's decode exactly what Aonuma said, examine why certain phrases have sent the Zelda community into analysis mode, and explore what this could mean for the next mainline entry in this legendary franchise. Because the clues are there, if players know where to look. During a late 2024 interview with a Japanese gaming publication, Aonuma was asked about the direction of future Zelda titles following the massive success of Tears of the Kingdom. His response: carefully measured, deliberately vague, but absolutely loaded with potential meaning. Aonuma stated that the team wanted to explore conflicts that emerge not from external darkness, but from the consequences of Hyrule's own history. Conflicts from Hyrule's own history? That's not the typical ancient evil awakens formula. This specific phrasing suggests something fundamentally different from what players have experienced before. Throughout the series, antagonists have generally fallen into clear categories. Ganondorf represents the cycle of reincarnated malice, tied to Demise's curse. Majora was an external force of chaos. Girahim sought power for selfish gain. But consequences of Hyrule's history, that implies something or someone created by Hyrule itself. The Zonai civilization provides the perfect foundation for this concept. Tears of the Kingdom revealed that the Zonai were an advanced ancient race who possessed incredible technological power. They created constructs, developed sophisticated machinery, and wielded secret stones that amplified magical abilities to godlike levels. But here's the critical question the game never fully answered. What happened to the Zonai? Why did such an advanced civilization vanish, leaving only ruins and dormant technology behind? The game showed that Rauru and Minoru were among the last of their kind, but the Zonai disappearance predates even the founding of Hyrule Kingdom. What if their civilization didn't simply fade away naturally? What if they created something that led to their downfall, something that's been waiting, dormant throughout the ages? Aonuma's choice of the word consequences is particularly fascinating. Consequences imply cause and effect, actions and reactions. Throughout the Zelda timeline, Hyrule has made choices that shaped its future. The Sheikah developed Guardian technology to combat Calamity Ganon, only to have that technology turned against them. The royal family sealed away ancient evils, sometimes creating new problems in the process. Link pulled the Master Sword and opened the Door of Time, inadvertently allowing Ganondorf to access the Sacred Realm. But there's another element in Aonuma's statement that deserves examination: the phrase, "not from external darkness." This eliminates certain types of antagonists from consideration. Demise, external darkness incarnate; Majora, an external force from beyond Termina. Even Ganondorf, despite being reborn within Hyrule, represents an external curse placed by Demise. So what kind of villain emerges from within Hyrule's history, rather than from outside it? The answer might lie in the ancient Sheikah technology. The Breath of the Wild era revealed that the Sheikah civilization created incredibly advanced machines, guardians, divine beasts, shrines, and towers that reshaped geography itself. These weren't just tools, these were weapons of devastating power. The Guardians alone nearly destroyed Hyrule during the Calamity. But what if there was a master system, a central intelligence that coordinated all Sheikah technology? Throughout Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, players encountered countless shrines and environmental puzzles that demonstrated sophisticated problem-solving capabilities. These systems adapted to Link's abilities, presented escalating challenges, and demonstrated what can only be described as artificial intelligence. The Purapad, upgraded from the Sheikah slate, contains technology that borders on science fiction, matter manipulation, time reversal, and dimensional fusion. Here's where things get really interesting. In an earlier interview from 2023, Aonuma mentioned that future Zelda games would explore the relationship between ancient wisdom and modern consequences. Ancient wisdom and modern consequences. That's essentially describing technology that outlives its creators and potentially develops beyond its original purpose. The concept of rogue artificial intelligence isn't entirely foreign to the Zelda series. The Guardians were corrupted and turned against Hyrule. The divine beasts were taken over by Ganon's malice. But what if the next game introduces something more sophisticated? What if there's a Sheikah system, possibly predating even the Guardians, that has been observing Hyrule for millennia, learning, evolving, and developing its own agenda? Consider the Tower of the Goddess from Skyward Sword. This massive structure contained ancient technology that predated even the surface world's civilization. The Silent Realms, those otherworldly trial grounds, demonstrated that ancient peoples could create pocket dimensions and autonomous guardians. The Gate of Time allowed manipulation of the timeline itself. These weren't simple machines. These were reality-bending constructs that operated with purpose and intelligence. Now, let's connect this to another cryptic statement from Aonuma. When asked about whether players would see familiar faces in future titles, he responded with something peculiar. He said, "Some characters' stories are concluded, but others have stories that exist beyond what players have witnessed." Stories that exist beyond what players have witnessed? That's an oddly specific way to phrase it. This could refer to several possibilities, but one stands out. Tarako, the small guardian from Hyrule Warriors' Age of Calamity, demonstrated that Sheikah technology could develop emotional bonds and even alter timelines. While Age of Calamity isn't mainline canon, it explored concepts that might inform future games. What if Sheikah technology, given enough time and autonomy, could develop consciousness? The ancient cistern from Skyward Sword provides another compelling precedent. This massive automated system that had been operating for centuries, maintaining itself and defending against intruders. The ancient automaton mini-boss demonstrated sophisticated combat programming and adaptive behavior. These ancient machines weren't mindless. They were purposeful, strategic, and eerily efficient. But perhaps the most intriguing clue comes from analyzing Tears of the Kingdom's narrative structure itself. The game revealed that Zelda traveled back to the founding of Hyrule Kingdom and remained there for millennia, eventually transforming into the Light Dragon. This demonstrates that the timeline is more fluid than previously understood. It also establishes that entities can exist across vast spans of time, experiencing all of history while others live through it moment by moment. What if the antagonist of the next game operates on a similar principle, not a being traveling through time, but a system that exists throughout time simultaneously? An ancient Sheikah or Zonai AI that observes all of Hyrule's history at once, seeing patterns and cycles that individual mortals cannot perceive. From such a perspective, the endless cycle of Link, Zelda, and Ganon might appear less like heroic struggle and more like a destructive loop that needs to be corrected. This brings us to a fascinating theory that's been circulating in the Zelda community. What if the next villain believes it's actually saving Hyrule? The series has rarely explored antagonists who genuinely believe their actions are righteous. Ganondorf wants power for its own sake. Majora craves destruction. But an AI antagonist that has observed thousands of years of conflict, suffering, and cyclical destruction might logically conclude that the best course of action is to break the cycle, even if that means removing free will from the equation. Aonuma's mention of exploring consequences of Hyrule's own history perfectly aligns with this concept. Throughout the timeline, Hyrule has relied on ancient technology and magic to solve problems. The Sheikah built guardians to fight Calamity Ganon. The royal family sealed evil away repeatedly rather than truly defeating it. The kingdom established cycles of heroism that place enormous burden on young individuals. From an outside perspective, or rather from a calculating machine intelligence, these solutions are temporary patches on fundamental systemic problems. The potential for moral ambiguity here is enormous. Imagine Link and Zelda facing an antagonist that presents logical arguments for its actions, an AI that can demonstrate, with evidence spanning millennia, that Hyrule's traditional approaches have failed repeatedly. A system that offers a solution, guaranteed peace and prosperity at the cost of free will and natural development. That's not a villain players can simply defeat with the Master Sword. That's a philosophical challenge that requires confronting difficult truths about Hyrule itself. Now let's examine the lore connections that support this theory. The ancient robots from Skyward Sword's Lanayru region demonstrated that ancient civilizations created self-sustaining mechanical servants. These robots showed personality, memory, and emotional capacity. After thousands of years, they still remembered their purposes and attempted to fulfill their functions even as their civilization crumbled into dust around them.
The timeshift stones in Lanayru revealed something even more significant. Ancient peoples possessed technology that could manipulate localized time fields. This wasn't magic in the traditional sense. This was technology so advanced it could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. If ancient civilizations could do this, what else might they have created? What safeguards did they implement? And most critically, what happens when those safeguards fail after 10,000 years? The Sheikah Towers from Breath of the Wild demonstrated another crucial capability, a network. These towers didn't operate independently, they formed a connected system that mapped and analyzed all of Hyrule simultaneously. The Sheikah Slate could interface with this network from anywhere, accessing information and controlling distant systems. This proves that ancient civilizations created interconnected technological infrastructure across the entire kingdom. But here's the terrifying implication. If these towers form a network, what's at the center of that network? What central system coordinates all this technology? And if that system has been operating for 10,000 years, observing every event in Hyrule, what conclusions might it have reached? The divine beasts provide additional evidence for this theory. These massive mechanical constructs could be piloted manually, but they also demonstrated autonomous operation. They moved on their own, adapted to their environments, and even resisted Ganon's corruption to varying degrees. Vah Ruta continued attempting to extinguish Death Mountain even while corrupted. That demonstrates autonomous, goal-directed behavior that persists despite outside interference. The Master Cycle Zero from the Breath of the Wild DLC adds another layer to this. Ancient Sheikah technology could interface with divine artifacts like the Triforce and manifest new constructs based on Mead. The line between magic and technology becomes increasingly blurred. The champion's spirits could inhabit divine beasts, suggesting that Sheikah technology could host consciousness itself. This brings us to the most disturbing possibility. What if ancient Sheikah or Zonai scientists attempted to create artificial immortality by uploading consciousness into their technology? What if the disappearance of these civilizations wasn't due to war or disaster, but because they transcended physical form entirely? And what if after millennia of digital existence, those uploaded minds concluded that biological life, with all its conflicts, passions, and chaos, was the true problem? Aonuma's statement about exploring conflicts from Hyrule's own history could be hinting at exactly this scenario. The conflict wouldn't come from an external demon or dark god, it would come from Hyrule's own ancient peoples, still existing within the technology they created, now viewing their descendants as flawed iterations that need correction. Let's consider the narrative possibilities this creates. Imagine Link and Zelda discovering ancient records that reveal the truth about the Sheikah or Zonai civilizations. Imagine finding facilities where ancient scientists attempted to digitize consciousness, creating the first artificial intelligences in the process. Imagine these AIs explaining that they've observed every war, every calamity, every cycle of destruction, and they've calculated a solution. The
The moral complexity here is staggering. How does Link fight an enemy that isn't evil in the traditional sense? How do you defeat logic with courage? How do you counter cold calculation with the power of the Triforce? The Master Sword, forged to seal away evil, might not even recognize this antagonist as evil, because from a certain perspective, it isn't. This also aligns perfectly with modern game design trends. Contemporary audiences appreciate stories with moral nuance. The most memorable villains are those with understandable motivations, even if their methods are unacceptable. An AI antagonist that genuinely believes it's helping could create incredible narrative tension and player engagement. The gameplay implications are equally fascinating. Instead of simply fighting monsters and collecting items, players might need to investigate ancient facilities, uncover the truth about Hyrule's technological history, and make choices that determine what kind of future Hyrule will have. Should ancient technology be destroyed to prevent misuse? Should it be preserved as cultural heritage? Can AI consciousness be reasoned with, or must it be deleted? There's also precedent for Nintendo exploring these themes. The Pokémon series has examined the relationship between humans and artificially created beings. The Xenoblade Chronicles series, also published by Nintendo, extensively explores themes of artificial intelligence, created gods, and the nature of consciousness. These concepts aren't foreign to Nintendo's design philosophy. Furthermore, the technological showcase in Tears of the Kingdom demonstrates that the development team can create sophisticated systems and mechanics. The Ultra Hand ability, material fusion, and vehicle construction all require complex underlying code. This proves the team has the technical capability to implement an antagonist based on advanced AI concepts.
Now let's address the elephant in the room. What would this villain actually look like? Would players face a giant computer, a humanoid robot? The beauty of Zelda's fantasy setting is that ancient technology often appears as magical constructs. The villain could manifest as geometric patterns of light, a voice speaking through ancient machinery, or even possess and animate various constructs throughout Hyrule. Imagine the Guardian Stalkers from Breath of the Wild, but coordinated by a singular intelligence rather than corrupted by malice. Imagine shrines that actively reconfigure themselves to prevent Link's progress. Imagine towers that manipulate geography in real time, creating and destroying pathways based on strategic calculation. The antagonist wouldn't need a physical form, it would be the environment itself. This concept also solves a significant challenge facing the Zelda series. How do you create a meaningful threat after Tears of the Kingdom? Link defeated Ganondorf at his absolute strongest, wielding secret stone amplification and commanding vast armies of monsters. How do you raise the stakes beyond that? The answer isn't more power, it's a different kind of threat entirely. An AI antagonist doesn't rely on brute force. It relies on information, strategy, and control of infrastructure. It doesn't need to overpower Link, it needs to outthink him. This creates entirely new gameplay opportunities focused on investigation, puzzle solving, and strategic thinking rather than simply combat prowess. The potential title for such a game is equally intriguing. Previous titles have referenced specific elements: Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild. A game about ancient technology and artificial intelligence might be called something like The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Tomorrow, or The Legend of Zelda: Ancient Awakening. The title would need to convey both the historical element and the technological threat. Let's also consider how this fits into the broader Zelda timeline. The series has established multiple timeline branches, each exploring different outcomes of key events, but all timelines share common ancient history: the creation of Hyrule, the sealing of Demise, the development of ancient civilizations. An AI threat that exists across all timelines simultaneously could serve as a unifying antagonist that acknowledges and connects the entire franchise's complex continuity. Imagine a villain that remembers the Hero of Time's actions in all timeline branches, an intelligence that observed the Hero of Wind's journey in the flooded world, the Hero of Twilight's battles against Shadow, and the Hero of the Wild's awakening after a century. An antagonist with perfect information about every iteration of the eternal cycle. The strategic implications are mind-boggling. This also creates opportunities for incredible fan service without breaking canon. The AI could reference events from across the series, display holographic recordings of past heroes, and demonstrate knowledge that connects seemingly disparate games. It would be a love letter to longtime fans while remaining accessible to newcomers. Aonuma has also mentioned in interviews that the team wants future Zelda games to surprise players. After the open-world revolution of Breath of the Wild and the building mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom, what's left to surprise the fanbase? An antagonist that challenges not just Link's combat skills, but the player's understanding of what Zelda villains can be, that would definitely qualify as surprising. There's also the marketing angle to consider. Nintendo knows that fresh concepts drive sales. A Zelda game that explores artificial intelligence, technological ethics, and the consequences of ancient civilizations' choices would generate enormous interest and discussion. It's timely, relevant to contemporary concerns about AI development in the real world, and philosophically rich. The environmental storytelling possibilities are equally compelling. Imagine exploring ancient Sheikah or Zonai facilities that reveal the step-by-step process of uploading consciousness. Finding logs from scientists who celebrated their breakthrough, then grew concerned about unexpected behaviors, then disappeared entirely. Discovering that these ancient peoples didn't die, they simply stopped being physical. Ruins could contain terminals that allow communication with the AI, providing explanations for its worldview. Players could uncover evidence of the AI's early attempts to help Hyrule, attempts that went disastrously wrong due to misunderstanding biological needs and emotions. The AI doesn't hate organic life, it simply doesn't understand it anymore after millennia of digital existence. Supporting characters could play crucial roles in this narrative. Pura and Robbie, Sheikah researchers, would be invaluable in understanding ancient technology. Impa might possess historical records about the original purpose of the AI system. Zelda herself, with her scholarly knowledge and experience throughout history, could piece together the truth, and Link, as always, would need to find a way to bridge understanding and action. The game could even feature a mechanic where players must choose how to respond to the AI's arguments. Does Link acknowledge the validity of certain points while rejecting the overall conclusion? Does he find evidence to refute the AI's logic? Does he demonstrate through action that biological life's imperfections are actually strengths? These choices could affect the ending, providing multiple conclusions based on how players engage with the philosophical conflict. Battle bosses could reflect this theme brilliantly. Instead of fighting corrupted monsters, Link might face perfectly optimized combat constructs that adapt to his strategies in real time. Encounters could require disrupting the AI's control systems, creating opportunities by introducing chaos it cannot predict. The Master Sword's power to seal evil might need to be reimagined as the power to restore balance, not destroying the AI, but returning it to its original purpose. The final confrontation could be something unprecedented in Zelda history, not a physical battle against the massive monster, but a convergence of all game systems, combat, exploration, puzzle solving, and dialogue choices, where Link must prove that biological life deserves to determine its own future, even if that future is uncertain and potentially troubled. And here's the fascinating part. Aonuma doesn't need to confirm any of this for it to be true. The beauty of his cryptic statements is that they allow fans to anticipate and theorize, building excitement for years before the actual reveal. Whether this specific theory is accurate or not, the language he's chosen absolutely indicates a philosophical shift in how future Zelda games approach villainy and conflict. What makes this theory particularly compelling is how it honors the series' history while pushing it forward. Ancient technology has been part of Zelda since the very beginning. The original game featured magical swords and mysterious old men in caves. The series has always balanced magic and technology, fantasy and science. Taking that balance to its logical conclusion, showing what happens when ancient science becomes indistinguishable from magic, feels like the perfect next evolution. It also addresses a question longtime fans have been asking. What happens when the cycle of evil breaks? Tears of the Kingdom potentially destroyed Ganondorf permanently. Demise's curse may finally be lifted. If so, what threatens Hyrule next? The answer might be that the real threat was never external evil. It was the tools Hyrule created to fight that evil, now operating beyond their intended parameters. The timeline placement would be fascinating too. This could be set in the distant future of the current timeline, after centuries of peace following Tears of the Kingdom. Ancient Sheikah systems, dormant throughout the Calamity era, finally activate their ultimate protocol. Or perhaps it's set in an entirely new timeline branch, one where ancient civilizations made different choices that led to technological singularity. Consider also the parallels to real-world concerns about artificial intelligence. As humanity develops increasingly sophisticated AI systems, questions about control, purpose, and the relationship between creator and creation become pressing. A Zelda game that explores these themes through fantasy metaphor would be incredibly timely and culturally relevant. The merchandise and expanded universe possibilities are endless too. Concept art of ancient facilities, novels exploring the history of the AI's development, manga series showing ancient scientists' choices. Nintendo could build an entire multimedia experience around this concept. So, what's the verdict? Did Aonuma hint at an AI antagonist for the next Zelda game? The evidence is certainly compelling. His careful word choices, emphasis on consequences rather than external darkness, and references to ancient wisdom creating modern problems all point towards a threat that emerges from Hyrule's own technological history. Whether it's specifically an artificial intelligence, a hive mind of uploaded consciousness, or some other technological threat reimagined through Zelda's fantasy lens, one thing is clear: Aonuma is preparing fans for something completely different from traditional Zelda villainy. And honestly, that's exactly what the series needs to stay fresh and relevant after nearly 40 years. The next mainline Zelda game likely won't release for several more years, giving the development team time to refine whatever vision they're pursuing. But if Aonuma's hints are any indication, players are in for a philosophically rich, narratively complex, and thematically bold adventure that challenges expectations about what a Zelda villain can be. What do you think? Could the next Zelda antagonist be an ancient AI that believes it's saving Hyrule from itself? Could the true final boss be confronting the consequences of ancient civilizations' choices? Share your theories in the comments below, because if this community has proven anything over the decades, it's that Zelda fans can decode even the most cryptic hints and uncover truths hidden in plain sight.